place where the magic happens. Conversations flow and the laughter snapping. Here at Netters Network, where the stories come alive. Every episode's a journey, every guest a drive. Netters Network, tune in for the show, where the headlines meet the heart, and we all get to know. From the highs to the lows, we've got it all in tow. Netters Network, where the world's on the go.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Netters Network Thursday Things, just like my icon says. Of course, joining me is the love of my life, that guy at the end of the bar, Troy Pacelli. How you doing tonight, sweetie? And what are you sipping on?
I'm doing okay for a Thursday, and I'm drinking an A&W Zero Sugar Root Beer.
And I've switched up slightly. I have a Signature Select, which is the Jewel food store brand, seltzer water cherry flavored. So I switched to cherry from raspberry. I don't think I have any other. I have mixed berry left. And I still have a couple of the Meyer ones, which I'll get to eventually.
There you go. Sounds good.
Yep. Before we bring in our special guest, which you all know, let me say hello to the chat. First in was FKHC 2005, also known as First.
Yes, exactly.
Big Al presents. Have a great show, my friends. Wishing everyone a happy Friday. I guess that's for tomorrow. Either that or he's mixed up his days. JPRPH1 saying hello to everyone and doing the emojis. Connie Cleary saying hello to the chat. Lady Mist with her pretty hearts and flowers for me. Let's see. Then there's that Netter lady saying hello to that Troy guy.
Yeah, they should just get a room.
They got a whole house.
They got a whole... Exactly right.
DJ Play Nice. How you doing, sweetie?
Good to see you, buddy.
And there's that Troy guy saying hello to that Netter lady.
And y'all get to know from the... Sorry.
You still got to send me the lyrics to that. I know them, but not as well as I should know my own theme song.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's playing, I kind of can follow along. But if you asked me to sing it, I wouldn't be able to. Let me get my other hi sweetie in there too. DJ Play Nice and right, because I always do that. And Deleted Scenes popped in. How you doing, sweetie?
Good to see you, buddy.
I'm sitting there clicking on his name, trying to get it to go into my chat so I can say hello.
That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works.
No. Okay, I think that's everybody. My special guest tonight, you all know him. He is of course, friend of the channel, a friend of Troy's and mine, and we actually got to meet him over the MegaCon weekend, which was really nice.
About time.
Yeah. Let me introduce to you Age Boomer. How you doing tonight, sweetie? And what are you sipping on?
Howdy, everybody. Well, I didn't know I had to have a special drink. I just got a water.
That is perfectly fine, especially in the middle of the week, just as long as you're staying hydrated.
I mean, I'm drinking water. Mine's just cherry flavored seltzer water.
There you go.
That sounds very delightful.
Yeah, that's like sometimes you want a little bit of flavor with your water. Just,
True.
You know, but I'll drink regular water throughout the day. So, yeah, I only get the special water at night.
Right.
Okay. Well, no, that's cool. So here we are. So we got to meet each other for the first time. And I don't know if I met your expectations or I don't know, but I was kind of.
Well, I don't remember if Netter would have known, but I know I saw you on camera a couple times
Yeah, I showed myself
behind the
to you a couple
scenes.
times. Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's not like, it's not like it was a big shock,
It's
but
funny because I we went to a very nice restaurant. I might have worn I would have. I normally I would have just worn a collared shirt because that's what I wear to work. But I thought I'd be meeting him somewhere else. So I thought wear something distinct. So I wore my Schoolhouse Rock T-shirt because I
yes,
didn't know what else
yes.
to
And
wear.
I thought that was perfect.
Yeah, I actually didn't know we were going to such a nice restaurant. I just knew we were all going to meet up to go out to eat. And had I known it was that nice, I probably would have worn something nicer.
Well, there you go. It was funny though because we met a number of YouTubers whom, unlike yourself, I had never seen at all. What their faces looked like,
Oh wow.
and I do have to say that most of them did not look like what I expected at all.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you hear somebody's voice and you picture them a certain way, and then when you meet them, it's like they don't look like their voice. You
Yeah.
know?
Well, and in fairness, at least one of them I know kind of augments his voice
That's true.
using
Yeah.
the sound tricks, so to speak, and
Oh.
whatnot.
I think my biggest surprise was that Culture Casino is my height.
Oh.
Yeah, well, we took a picture together and I was like, I'm a good inch or two taller than he is. I was really surprised by that.
Well, he still
Really
has a
nice guy,
commanding
though.
presence.
And he's got a great head of hair. I was a little bit
And
envious,
that
I gotta
beard.
say that.
Oh, he's
Yeah,
got such a
he
soft, fluffy beard.
definitely has the ability to. I mean, I have a beard too, but I can't grow one as full as he does.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like super nice guy. I mean, the way you see him on stream is the way he is in person. He's
Actually,
just
I
a really
found
nice
that to
guy.
be true of every one of the
Oh yeah, absolutely.
well, with one exception. I mean, he absolutely plays a character, so I had no idea who I was meeting until he told me, and I'm like, oh, you don't look anything like that. He was like, well, no, I guess I wouldn't. I'm being purposely vague, obviously. I have. I'm trying. I feel like here's the example for those of you that are comic book fans. When I was at MegaCon with all these big YouTubers, I felt like Snapper Carr at the Justice League. Getting to know all these big, powerful people. I'm like, I know secrets and I can't tell nobody.
It was interesting because they had Snapper Carr in the Justice League animated series, and I'd never seen
Did
this
they?
guy before. Yes, he was one of the big reporters on there. He would show up. This is Snapper Carr. The Martians are invading, and where is Superman? He would say stuff like that.
That's interesting that they went that route with him because in the comics, he was just like a James Dean kind of guy. He was meant to be the Joe Average character that
The Jimmy Olsen.
well, maybe not quite like Jimmy Olsen. Jimmy Olsen, I think, was meant to be like a little bit nerdy, but because he worked as a photographer, he would always be there for the news stories, and get to interact with Superman just like Lois Lane did.
Right.
Snapper Carr wasn't like that. I don't remember if he had a job of any kind. He literally he just drove around in his car and, always found himself actually at the center of something that was going on. He was the average guy that had to get rescued, and he had gotten rescued by Justice League members so many times, they got to know him,
Oh,
and he
I
ended up
see. So
becoming like a
they made him a
not that he
reporter.
was not that he was like Lois Lane where he was going and purposely getting into dangerous situations. It was just, if you think about what life would be like in a world of superheroes and supervillains, there's always a building crashing on you. There's always, a crash up ahead that you have to swerve to avoid. Aliens falling from the sky, dogs and cats living together, all the mass hysteria. And he's just trying to dodge it, right? Like every other person. But just by his luck, and he kind of saw it as luck because he did get to hobnob with the superheroes. That's the kind of thing I could relate to. But they also wrote him kind of clunky because these were, old white guys trying to write comics about a cool, some guy who was young and hip, and they didn't know how to write young and hip.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I remember when I was watching a lot of those DC animated movies, they came with some of these great documentaries about like the origin, like comic book stories they were basing the things on.
Sure.
And I remember when they were talking about the Justice League, later on they talked about the Super Friends, but they argued one of the problems with the Super Friends was you could take any line of dialogue and stick it on any of the characters and it wouldn't have made a difference. They were like they weren't distinguishing them enough, at least on those early Super Friends series.
It's funny that you say that because I've been going back. I'm doing an audit of my comics basically, and as I am, I'm kind of literally going through comics going back to the '60s, and just realizing how different the storylines were, throughout the decades, and all the decades literally that I read, But here's something interesting. We're always talking about Smallville, right? Which was a really good adaptation of Clark's life before he becomes Superman, TV serial, right? And do you remember who his comic book hero was in that show?
Oh, I know what you're referring to. I can't think of it off of the top of my head. It
I
was
believe
Luthor also read the comics. I remember that.
Well,
Yes,
he
yes.
owned
Yeah.
prestige, mint.
Like the first
edition
issue. I remember
copies of the
Oliver
first
Queen
issue.
said, "Let's make this." Did he say, "Let's make this a two-parter"? Was that
Something like that.
was that on Smallville or Everwood? Because on Everwood, I think the kids' manga got torn up by um, Chris, what's his name, who later went on to be in who played Star-Lord. He was started out on Everwood.
Oh, Chris Pratt. Yeah.
He tears the kids' manga
Let's
in
make
half.
this a two-parter.
But I think Lex Luthor got his comic book torn in half too by another
And he had to get it
blonde
replaced.
bully guy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, see, and that was the thing, right? Because he was wealthy, so he was able to own these comics, and Clark could just I remember reading them. I was a big, fan. They were both fans of this character named, I believe it was Avenging Angel.
Something like that, yes.
It was a character that they could clearly draw as though it was like Superman. The red and the blue, with the red being like wings. And the first issue of this Avenging Angel comic is a pastiche to Action Comics #1.
Was it Warrior Angel?
Oh, maybe it was Warrior Angel. Yeah,
I don't remember.
Right.
It's close to something around Avenging or Warrior Angel, something like that. Yes.
Well, I just discovered recently that a character that was owned by, well, probably still is, I assume, owned by Marvel Comics that was named Angel, who wore a blue outfit with red cape, very Superman looking, was one of their characters that had a really long run in their original Marvel Comics magazine, starting with Marvel Comics #1. And I always wondered if there was, some character that the people that made Smallville might have been basing that on. And now I'm thinking, was a DC show referencing indirectly a Marvel character that was indirectly, parallel to Superman? I don't know.
I've often argued it would be kind of a neat thing, like if on Marvel movies or Marvel TV shows and DC movies, the comic books in their world was the other line. Like in like DC universe, they'd read Marvel comics, and in Marvel they'd read DC. I remember the ones in Spider-Man 2 when she makes a comment to Peter Parker like, "Yo, you're not Superman," like she says, don't, like
yeah.
It was a nice little nod, even though because it's
but the other interpretation of that could be a reference to Nietzsche, which of course they did in the first episode of Smallville when he drops, I can't remember if it was the Prince or what it was.
Yes.
And Lana says, "So have you decided, man or Superman?" He goes, "Not yet. I'll tell you when I figure it out," which literally is the premise for the whole series, right?
Yeah, that happened in the first episode, in the second episode
Yeah.
of Superman the Animated Series, where Lois Lane is looking at him in front of the other reporters, and she's going, "Look at that! He's the Nietzschean ideal wrapped up in a red cape, the Superman."
Yeah.
And that's what she says right there. And then,
That is
yes,
a brilliant
yes,
way to come to that. I always felt it was a little cheap the way they did it in the Donner version. What a Superman.
uh,
And that's how I'm like, yeah, that's hokey, but yeah, it was okay, right? The important thing is that it comes from Lois. That's definitely part of the lore. I think that that Lois would be uh, drawing from Nietzsche. I think that makes a lot of sense. But I do love a lot of the foibles that they added to Lois in the Donner version, like she smokes. She keeps trying to quit smoking, but she
yes,
keeps falling back into that. She uh can't spell. She's always misspelling, and luckily she's got a good editor, because
mhm.
otherwise but yeah, and a lot of that stuff has worked its way into the comics, because even to this day they still have, just like
Oh,
what happened in what wasn't it I can't remember if it was the first movie or the second movie, where after she's been corrected on her spelling by Perry White, um Jimmy comes up behind her and goes, corrects her spelling on something else. It's like,
Well,
that's
she can't
funny.
spell.
I know. She's a composer. She's not a
A
speller,
proofer.
but yeah. Yeah, exactly. She's not an editor, she's a writer.
Well,
So
If she's a writer, she should know how to spell.
well,
There was a funny episode of Superman the Anime Series, the first episode with Mr. Mixo-Spitlick, and of course,
yeah.
Mr. Mixo-Spitlick wants to have a big duke out with Superman. Wants to do all this stuff. So, but the trick is, if you can get him to either say or read his name, he'll have to disappear and go back for like
Right.
another month or something. So, in one instance, when he shows up, he's like, "Okay, you and I outside," or like he's got something to go, and Clark is like saying, "Look, I can't do anything until I proof this. Give me that paper, I'll do it for you." And then he circles all the wrong mistakes in it, and it actually spells out his name, and then he says, "Oh no," and he disappears again, and then Lois comes over and says, "You're getting sloppy, Smallville. This spelling, your spelling's worse than mine." And it's like,
There you go.
was a trick,
Exactly.
yes.
That is, and that's, in my opinion, that's great writing. I haven't gotten back to it, but I do want to get back to my idea of how I would have done a new live action DC universe, because they're never going to get it right. I have no faith in the Gunn universe,
No.
but one of the things that I've always been inspired by, and I think needs to be adapted into live action, is a good version of the first meeting between Superman and Batman.
Yes.
And I've told you that the comics have actually done it very well a couple times. My favorite being in the post-crisis reboot that John Byrne did, where I can't remember. I think Bruce comes to Metropolis, and he's got a bad reputation because this is early in his career, and he's thought of as a vigilante, and Superman kind of lays down, this is my town. We do
Yeah.
things by the book, and blah blah blah.
I think
And
they were inspired by that on the animated series.
I have no doubt, they
Yeah.
pull from some of the best comics in that
Yeah.
series.
Yeah.
And at the very end of it, after they've been, they've worked well together, and they've found respect for each other. They both agree that they work differently, but they
Yes.
are different one's got, the powers of a god, the other has no superpowers whatsoever.
Their aims are similar, so yes.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
they agree they're on the same side. They work well together. But your town is different from mine too. And as they part ways, Clark says to him, I actually don't remember how the conversation gets to it, but it's something about Batman being the world's greatest detective. And he goes, "Well, world's greatest detective?" He goes, "Yeah, I take all the information at my disposal, and I make deductive reason. That's how I know that your secret identity is Clark Kent." And he's like, well, that really is amazing. You really are a good detective. Well, it was really nice meeting you, Bruce. And he takes off. And
That's funny.
Batman's standing there like, the heck? Because he had actually gone to the effort of like lining his cowl with lead foil so that he couldn't see his face.
Well, do
But
not forget that Clark Kent is an investigator
he's an
of his own,
investigative
because
reporter,
he's
exactly.
a very talented journalist, and I kind of feel they don't go into that enough in Superman. That he's
Well,
actually a
there's
very skilled
also
journalist. Yeah.
not only that, he, of all the superpowers, one of the ones that the people don't think about is super intelligence. And it is kind of nodded to by, gosh, I didn't think I would be bringing him up this soon, but Gene Hackman. Gene
Yes.
Hackman in Superman 4, excuse me.
Yes.
When he makes a reference and says, you were the only one who could ever keep up with me. In other words, actually acknowledging that Superman is as much a genius as Lex Luthor is.
Well,
But,
his parents were very intelligent. I mean, the Kryptonian parents.
well,
I read.
yeah.
I don't know if you read the novel, The Last Days of Krypton. It's an
No,
interesting
I've got it
book.
on my Amazon list. Is that the one that was written post-crisis? I think
It
it
might have
was.
been. It's a novel
Yeah.
form. What was interesting is it kind of it explains why Krypton didn't like why didn't they reach out for help? Why didn't they have colonies elsewhere? It actually explains all that in the book, which I thought was interesting. Like
It
they were
sounds like, yeah, it
Mhm.
sounds post-crisis
Yeah,
because John Byrne had kind of outlined all of that and in a very interesting way.
they were extremely xenophobic. They didn't
Mm-hmm.
trust
Mm-hmm.
other alien species because in centuries past, they had a dictatorial ruler who got weapons from aliens to suppress their populace, and I think ended up killing a lot of Kryptonians with alien weaponry. So when he was finally deposed, they kind of swore off contact with extraterrestrials.
Yeah.
After that, they said that we're done.
Well,
We're not
there
dealing
was
with yeah.
there was an element that John Byrne worked in, this idea that not only that, but the idea that Kryptonians gained powers under a different solar radiation,
Hmm.
um, that caused a great deal of social concern by the scientists that knew about it,
Oh, interesting.
because they were really concerned about, well, and ultimately someone like Zod, right?
Yes.
Finding out you can get that kind of power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So they not only outlawed leaving Krypton, and having a space program or anything like that, but they worked into the genetic code such that you couldn't leave Krypton without it like killing you or whatever. But that indirectly resulted in certain other elements of the lore, like the who are they? The Daxamites,
Right.
like Largand and
Hmm.
and well, Mon-El and so forth, and which actually is the same guy, Largand. He went by the name of Mon-El as like an adoptive, surrogate brother to Clark, but he was a Daxamite. They're not allergic to kryptonite; they're allergic to lead, which is very dangerous because lead is very common throughout the universe.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it's not like kryptonite where you take it away and they get better. You get progressively worse. It's got a cumulative effect.
Plus, of course, that would make humans very deadly to them since that's our ammunition.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah.
One of the original stories of it was he meets Clark as when he's Superboy. They're both young, and they both think, because he's lost his memory, they both think he's from Krypton because he's got the same powers. But when he's exposed to lead, he's dying, and that's when Clark realizes not only is he not Kryptonian, but he doesn't respond the same way I do to kryptonite. And he's like, I can't figure out how to save you. There's only one thing I can do. And he sends him to the Phantom Zone. And he's trapped in there for a long time until I mean, Superman's a busy guy. He's got to restore Kandor. He's got to save Mon-El from lead poisoning. He's got all these other things he's got to do. And Mon-El actually ends up in there for hundreds of years, and he becomes one of the founding members of the Legion of the Superheroes.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense.
Yep. Because
Okay.
eventually Brainiac 5 brings him out and cures his lead poisoning.
Well, you know what? That was cool of Brainiac 5 to do that. It's just so bizarre that a future iteration of Brainiac is one of the Legions. It's like on Doctor Who when the Doctor would go into the far future to like a federation of planets of which Earth was a member and also Mars. Apparently, the Martians
Right.
had joined up because on Doctor Who the Martians were antagonists.
Right.
But I guess centuries in the future they had given up their warlike ways except for defense. They said that's what the one guy said. Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that because in the comics, at least in the John Byrne era, one of the other regular members of the Legion of the Superheroes was Supergirl. She would go forward in time and spend time in the future as a member of the team, where she had a romantic relationship with Brainiac 5. And on one of her first meetings with him, she said, Brainiac, like the Brainiac that my cousin's always fighting with? He goes, yes, he is my, fifth generation, ancestor.
Yes.
It's like, well, that's weird that you would be like a hero. He goes, not really. It's really pure logic. See, my ancestor was flawed in his reasoning.
That makes sense.
And it's like, wow. And he also sees himself as being more intelligent than his ancestor, which he had some arrogance problems too.
Well, you're not supposed to blame people for their ancestors, right?
Well, and not only that, if he's a little arrogant because he actually is that smart,
okay,
is it really arrogant? I mean,
I guess not. I don't
know.
But
he uses his power for good. That's what's important.
Oh, look at that.
What's that?
Mark Malikoff saying kapla.
Oh, hey, kapla. Here I are at Netters Network. Release the Netterbots now. And also want to say hi to Samuel Proctor, who says, Man of Steel tried to use the Kryptonian colony lore, but the way they did it, I remember created some plot holes. I don't remember exactly. I watched it to confirm if... See, that's kind of funny, Samuel, because I didn't watch any of that CW junk.
You mean the Snyder stuff, right?
Well, no. Man of Steel being the movie. You're right.
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. I was thinking of that Krypton or whatever series.
Oh, that wasn't CW. That was Sci-Fi Channel. I watched the first season of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll talk about that another time.
Okay. But you're talking about Man of Steel and the whole Zod thing stuff. Yeah. I kind of figured that they would bollocks it up. They didn't bother paying attention to the lore with that kind of stuff. So, but anyway, I don't know how we got off on, but you get me talking Superman.
Okay, now I know you said hello to Geek Flags, but did you thank him for the super chat?
I didn't. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much for the $2 super chat. He said he just got home. Awesome.
Well, I'm glad you're home and I'm glad you're safe. Yeah.
Yeah. Choice and Boomer started talking about comics, so it's like...
Sorry.
Exactly.
No, it's totally fine.
Do you have any questions for me? Like
right.
It's your show. Like what I don't know. That was a nice meatball we had, huh? That was...
Oh, God.
And
it was actually spicy.
Yes. But in a good way, not in a... Because some spicy Italian food, I've gone to the Romano's Macaroni Grill, but their spicy sausages, it's too much for me. Like, I'll be feeling that later. And it's funny because I can eat spicy Mexican, and I guess I could tolerate that more. I just know. I don't know.
There's a difference between... There's a difference between like the jalapeno type,
I love jalapeno,
burn your mouth type hot, and the I'm not sure what it is. If it's what are those seeds that they put into sausage?
Yeah,
That
probably.
that kind of burns your chest more, you know.
The weirdest food I ever had.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever had Ethiopian food?
I have not.
It is really weird because it's bland but spicy. So you're taking a bite of like their like bread stuff, and it's very bland. And then the spice hits you, but it doesn't give the bread any flavor. It's just hot.
It's not like it's flavor. It's just heat.
Just hot.
And welcome, Jesse Green, 619. Good to see you, my friend.
I wonder if it
Jesse.
tastes different in the climate. If you're eating it in that climate, maybe. I mean, maybe that makes
That's actually an excellent
Yeah.
point. We tend to think about, aromas and stuff. We don't think about humidity and temperature and how that can absolutely.
Maybe they're getting something out of it that we wouldn't. I don't know.
Think about,
it did come with like chickpeas stuff and hummus and like some other things.
Right.
And
right.
I wanted to try the bread by itself because it's like, let me try it by itself first, then I could try it with anything
Right.
else.
I see.
But
And,
then
it's horrible.
You originally grew up in the New Jersey area, right? So you were up north here like I did. So you are used to warm summers and cold winters. And you probably remember having different foods at different times of the year.
Yes, I would drink more hot drinks in the wintertime. That was more. When I lived up north, I was a tea drinker. That didn't really transfer with me down here, which I suppose doesn't make any sense because I know in the Middle East they drink tea all the time and it's hot there. But for some reason, when I moved to Florida, I drink iced tea, but I don't do the hot drinks as much since we moved. But when I lived in New Jersey, would drink a lot of hot drinks. I drank a lot of tea. Sometimes I'd have hot chocolate, but it was a lot of tea I would drink. And well, that of course I forget though. Growing up, soda was more of a treat than a regular thing because it was rather expensive up north. So, and if you get a bottle, you might get a glass out of it. But if you're when you have other people living in the house, you don't want to drink it all yourself. You're going to get into trouble with everybody else.
Yeah.
And then it goes flat sooner. So I got in the habit of drinking a lot of tea. And
in my house, we didn't really do soda. We did Kool-Aid. The kids drank Kool-Aid.
Kool-Aid, yeah.
And then of course you can make chocolate milk.
And yeah, I not so much in my house, but more like my friends. Their moms would have packets of Kool-Aid.
Yes.
Specifically for when the kids came over, and she'd make a pitcher.
And then we'd make popsicles out of them.
Well,
cool.
Yeah, you could do that too. That's right.
I don't remember if I did a lot with Kool-Aid. I think I must have. I think I did a lot with those powdered lemonades. I did that. I know I had friends that did the powdered iced teas, which I always thought was kind of odd. I've never had it.
Yeah, Lipton had a weird one like that.
Yeah, it had sugar in it, right? It was like a sugar tea. I remember though, you would get like these. I guess as a kid, I was more of a do-it-yourselfer. Like when it came to making. Do you remember that Jell-O treat that had the different layers? Does anybody remember this?
Kinda,
a mousse layer, and then like a Jell-O type layer, and then like a foam.
Oh God, yes, I do remember.
Weird.
Those.
I used to make that on my own because it's hard to explain. Like I got a piddly allowance, but grocery store. If I went to the grocery store, I would usually be able to get some stuff for myself. Not so much the soda though. I could get like snacks though. I used to get snack chips, and I used to get. If it was something weird like that, like the Jell-O or something, I would make that. I made that during the summertime. I remember that. I used to get the big cans of High C. Remember those?
Oh yeah.
And you had to puncture both sides.
Oh, that's right.
Mom would get that as a treat. So you would get it maybe once a month in the summertime. Mom would get, 1 or 2 cans of High C, and that's all you got. It was a special treat.
We never bought it to drink in the house because. And I don't know why. It's just these associations. It was always for the Boy Scout meetings and the Cub Scouts.
Oh, okay.
So you'd buy a bottle of that, 1 or 2, depending on how many boys there were, and it would be done by the end of the meeting. It wasn't something we had, throughout the week. That was just for the Scout meetings. I don't know why. It just was. Remember Tang?
Yeah.
I remember Tang from the Boy Scouts when we'd go camping.
Mom would get Tang, and I would pretty much just take a spoonful of it, get a little bit wet to form a paste and eat it that way.
Well,
Really?
sure. Yeah.
I was a little
No,
kid.
I mean, I'm not
This is
judging you. I
good.
just thought that's I mean, we all did the weird stuff. I used to, if you ever got the little pudding packets, I'd always pull the top off and lick the top.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah.
did too. And my grandmother, if she ever caught me doing that, would be like, "You're gonna cut your tongue." And I never did, because I knew what I was doing.
I think I would make pudding.
Wasn't that was that the Hunt's brand? And it was a single serving.
Yes,
Yeah, I got
yes.
them in. We'd get them in our lunch sometimes.
Yep.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember that. But what's weird is I remember those big cans of high C.
That actually sounds really good, JPRPH1.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Kool-Aid powder sprinkled over pineapple slices. That actually sounds kind of brilliant.
I remember I had to puncture both sides of the can to pour it. Remember? Because if you didn't do that, it wouldn't come out.
Right,
'Cause it's
because
like an
you'd
air
have a
thing.
vacuum inside. Exactly.
And then I find modern, like, I don't want to throw stones, but some of the younger millennials I knew, like, they didn't know how to use a can opener, and it's like can opener was part. You learned as a Gen Xer, you learned how to use that can opener.
Dude,
Yes.
I feel spoiled because the can opener that we have, and you've seen, you got the kind
Yeah.
with the crank, right?
Yep.
To open a full can, right? Whereas now I'm spoiled because I've got the same crank, but it's the one that breaks the seal and you don't cut yourself on it. It doesn't actually cut into the lid.
I
It,
remember
it cuts it away from the seam. And
those better.
but
Yeah.
when I was a kid, it was the old Army P-38, the little thing you carried on your keychain.
We had
and
one of
you-
those. Yeah. Yeah.
And you would open a can, and it would have this real jagged edge because of the nature of it.
Now, do you know why it was called a P-38?
Because that was the military. No?
It took 38 turns to open up a can. I counted every single can, no matter what the size. It took 38 turns of that to open it.
That's weird. I had no idea.
That's the Army for you. They're very down to
But the P-38, not only did you open cans with it, but you could also use it as
Bottle opener.
Bottle opener to put the holes like in a high C can if you needed something to pour. And if you turned it around, you could use it as a screwdriver.
Yep.
That's right, for like a
for a flathead screwdriver. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and I know some had cork unscrewers in them too. I think my dad had one that had a cork unscrewer that would pop out.
Oh, okay. I never saw that, but yeah,
that might have been a different thing than you had. But
yeah,
it was just it was weird being a kid back then. But like I said, I've mentioned this before. I of course had the microwave oven. So I got used to using that. And now it's funny, as an adult, I don't like using the microwave, but I used to use it all the time as a kid, But,
Did you, what is that? Sharkleberry Fin Kool-Aid was the bomb.
I think I had it, or I knew of it at least. Because sometimes you could buy the Kool-Aid that was already made. That's not really the same as the stuff you mix. Because Kool-Aid was complicated to make because you had to add the sugar to it. I think I tried buying it by itself, and the fruit flavor was separate from like the regular sugar you would use.
Right.
And I remember that.
But the selling feature for the parents was you got sugar anyway in your baking thing, but mom always was in control of the sugar, right? So mom could always decide how much sugar went into it. She could put less. She could put more,
and I want to remind everyone in the chat, I'm sure most, if not all of you, are already subbed to our special guest.
Right.
But can you click on that link and see if you're still subbed?
Double check, yeah.
By some surprise you are not subbed, would you mind hitting that subscription? Because he is seriously undersubbed.
Yes. And if you are so inclined, perhaps go to his channel, copy the link to his channel and share it out on your socials and tell people to go subscribe. We need to start getting this guy subscribers so that we can get him the memberships and the super chats and the whole thing, so that he can, feel like this hobby's actually worth it. Maybe one day we all make a living at this.
I'll say this: hanging out though with you, the people in the chat, and you good people, that also makes it worth it. Though I will say
it
that
is fun,
and especially our Friday night streams, they're always a good time. And did you know that spam was created by the? Yes, I'd heard about that.
Cool.
It was actually created for the U.S. Marine Corps. It was because a lot of those things were made in the private sector, but at the request of the military, and because they were looking for specifically ways to have meat dishes that wouldn't spoil.
And now there's bacon spam, and I have some in my cupboard.
Well, and there's a whole history behind how, as a result of spam in the rations, particularly in the Pacific.
Yep.
That's kind of how the Pacific Islanders became so enamored with it, and it's big not only in Hawaii, but in the Philippines and throughout the Pacific Islands.
They make.
Sorry, for some of you who are probably going, ew, spam. Have you ever actually ever tried it?
Yeah.
And if you like bacon, try the bacon spam one.
Yeah.
What Troy will do is he'll cut it up into little cubes and he'll fry it up, and it's kind of like hash.
Yeah.
And he'll throw in
it is
a can of diced potatoes.
Yes, it's not the healthiest of food. It's survival food. It's
But
a way
it's
to
yum.
it's a way to have protein when you can't otherwise get to it. But what were you saying there, Boomer?
No, I was just going to say, I just noticed from what I've seen, they have they do a lot with spam in Hawaii. They have different recipes they use with it, and from what I heard, it's very good actually. Yeah.
I've also heard that in other countries, Japan, and like I said, some of the other countries in the Pacific, they have different flavors that we don't have. Just like they do with
Like
Kit Kats for some
jalapeno.
reason. Yeah. They have all different flavors that we don't have. But that's fine. It's fine because I don't need a lot of great. Bacon spam is great because I like the bacon flavor. But plain spam is perfectly okay too, because you can spice. And it's funny because do you know why they call it spam?
No.
It's spiced ham.
Oh.
That's literally what it is. In fact, there's here in the Chicagoland area, there is it used to be a franchise. Now it's broken up and they're individual sub shops called Mr. Submarine. And it's very specific what goes into their sandwiches. One of the lunch meats is spiced ham. And I just realized, it's basically just spam that's cut in long strips.
Ah, I see. Well, it's funny though. Ham was big back in the day. I used to read what is it? I used to listen to these old time radio shows. It's not every so often you're going to hear a ham in a tin commercial come on and saying, look, you could do so much with this ham. It's great for holidays like Easter, and even the jelly you can use to flavor soups and that's left over. Like they're saying, you can do a lot. I guess it was about stretching what you bought at the grocery store.
Well, because we're talking about World War II, which it just butts up against the Great Depression, right?
Yep.
Where you had all kinds of rationing. First, it was because of economy. Then there was the Dust Bowl, where we had problems with getting food out of the breadbasket of the country. And then, of course, there was World War II, and so much of our food was being shipped overseas for the soldiers. So yeah, you always had to figure out how to stretch things out. And it's been in the past, let's say about 8 years or so, we've seen unnecessary shortages, shall we say. And we have had to kind of revert to that kind of mentality. And so we were, when you have a big chest freezer, I said to Netter, I'm like, we have half of our freezers filled with bacon. And she'd just look at me and go,
yeah and
well, where is the problem? And
well, we were at Meijer, and one of the brands had it on sale for $3.99. So I went through and I found all the ones that actually had meat on them, and it wasn't like all fat or just little, bits of meat in there. And I ended up with, I don't remember if it was 10 or 12 packages that I threw in the cart, and he's just looking at me like, "You think you got enough?" I'm like,
never have enough bacon.
The ones I left, there was like, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 packages that I left that were mostly fat. There was just the fat bits. So we walked away. We started shopping nearby. I came back because I wanted to double check the price to make sure I had the right brand or anything. And they had refilled it. I'm like, can I get some more? He's like, no.
Yeah. But the other thing we did was every year for Christmas, we get one of those big spiral hams.
Oh.
And I said, you know what? Just to be on the safe side, I got a couple tins of that chopped, the formed pressed ham in the tin.
Yes, yes.
Just in case, I said, you never know. These will keep until the following year, just in case we can't get any ham.
There you go.
And I just all the way along, I was like, and Netter, let's maybe pick up some powdered eggs. Let's get some powdered milk. Let's get some things that won't go bad, just in case anything.
And just for y'all, because I've already done the research on this, the best place to get powdered eggs was it Amazon or was it Home Depot?
Don't give away all of our secrets.
I have a small audience right now.
Well, that's true. That's true.
You can get it at, I don't know if y'all have them in all of your states, but Home Depot, they have
Oh, I didn't know they had
the best price on whole egg in cans. It's dried whole egg powder.
And the fact is, you can use this for most recipes. You can use it for making cakes, for all kinds of baking, scrambled eggs. The only thing you can't, I'm sorry, you're not going to be able to have like the fried egg with the runny yolk.
And it's like there's two different types. Like I've got both these in my cart, which I'm going to get tomorrow because we get paid. I've got a 33-ounce can of dried whole egg powder. And I also have a 36-ounce can of scrambled egg mix.
Yeah.
I figured they're probably going to be really close to the same, but
we're going to try
them.
But the thing is, and we've also gotten some of those packages of dried survival food. These are things you need. Yes, you need them in the event of the apocalypse. The zombies are coming. Whatever. Go to war. Whatever. But the fact is, we've all had situations. But Boomer knows. He's had hurricanes.
Oh boy.
There's the people out west have had the fires. Look. Sometimes supply lines,
zombies.
Yeah, zombie. You never know what could hamper the supply lines. Just be prepared is what I'm saying. And again, I'm going back to my Boy Scout days. Be prepared. I really quick wanted to answer the question from Nate. He said, Troy, did you try the Carnivore Delight recipe from the last weekend? No, I haven't had the chance to do that yet. But he sent me, and I think this was, correct me if I'm wrong, Nate, I think you came up with this. It was this, it's basically a burger, right? But it's a burger that had bacon and an egg on it. And I don't remember what all was on it. I was like, man, that's a lot of protein. That is your meal for the day. You don't really need anything else. And it looked really damn good. I am going to have to make those one day.
You should check out the channel Tasting History if you.
Oh, we watch every single episode.
Okay. Did you watch the one
with Max Miller, right?
Yeah. Did you watch the one where he talked about how they made ice cream on Navy ships in World War II?
Yes, I did, and it sounded so good. And one of the things was powdered eggs, and I'm like,
all sorts of powdered stuff, cornstarch, and it came out good. He was actually surprised. This is really good. He made a banana nut ice cream. That's what he made, right? Yeah.
In fact, he said that there was a ship specifically that would go around the fleet doling out ice cream.
Yep.
At one point, I'm like, that's kind of brilliant, and it's
it boosted troop morale. That's why they decided
it was. And don't be mistaken how important that really is. Yes. But yeah, he's had a lot of recipes that were like the rations during World War II. There was and what the soldiers would eat, what a Christmas dinner would be during World War II, during World War I, out in the field and so forth. He had this great recipe that I shared it with Mark Melnikoff, and he made a big pot of it. This it wasn't pasta fagioli, it was but it was like a pasta soup. that is attributed to Al Capone, because Al Capone had a soup kitchen in Chicago where he would feed, people that were out of work. It's very interesting history. We talk about the bootleggers and the Italian mob and so forth and whatnot, but there's a reason that people like Al Capone were very popular in their neighborhoods. They really did do exactly what they said they were going to do, and that was protect people in their towns and help out people that were out of work. And
I was
and
mentioning
so forth.
Goodfellas, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, but yeah, this particular, and I tried this dish too, and I'm like, man, this is really good. This is the kind of thing that Grandma would have really liked, So.
Have
But,
either of you ever watched the Army ration open up videos on YouTube? There's one
I've
guy
seen
Some.
some,
Yeah.
and
Oh, wow.
and I'm like, I'm glad they're doing this so I don't have to. There is that element of, well, this is very interesting. See what was in the K rations and whatnot
From like Vietnam era, one guy was opening them up. Yeah.
Sometimes you look at it and you're like, you're not really going to eat that, are you? Oh my gosh! And every now and again there will be something where they'll be like, yeah, no, I just
Sometimes they won't, but they will try. But another thing that the guy was doing was he was trying to try out the K rations from armies around the world, from military around the world. That was one channel. And I think he had one from China that didn't look so great. He got one from Italy. The one from Italy felt gourmet to me from what he got in there.
That's
Like
interesting.
it was like a tinned pork and like this jelly, but it looked fancy. I wonder if the Italian army eats better than us regular Americans, because it came with like this cool Italian candy, and it looked interesting. So I thought the Italians had the best one, the best rations. It looked like, but yeah.
Yeah, this is what I missed. So it's 2 all beef patties, a boneless chicken breast, 3 strips of bacon on a Kaiser roll, toasted with butter and garlic, and your choice of 3 cheeses. Yeah.
Interesting. Of course, you had some decent.
That's what my mistake was I was thinking egg. You said chicken, but you add egg to that with that chicken breast, and you have a mother and child reunion.
Oh, dude.
Do you know that's where the name of that song came from? The Paul Simon song, the Mother and Child Reunion. The story that he had told was that was inspired by this diner in New York that he went to that had, and it was called Mother and Child Reunion. It was scrambled eggs and a grilled chicken breast.
Oh, that's funny.
And that just stuck with him, and that's where the song Mother and Child Reunion came from.
I know at Cracker Barrel with some of the breakfasts you can get a choice of meat, and one of the choices is like a chicken tender, if you'd rather do that. But then I'm like, I'm eating chicken, but I'm eating eggs at the same time, and that seems odd. So, but I guess people do it.
That's very interesting. I and unless I'm mistaken, there are some I don't know if it's Jewish food laws or it's
yes, it is
Muslim halal that has to do with whether or not eggs and chicken or beef and milk are served together or not. I'm sure people have sensibilities about those.
I had a friend who was getting into trying to being kosher because he was trying to rediscover his Jewish family's roots. I don't know how accurate his process was, but like, for instance, you could eat cheese and you could eat a burger, but you couldn't eat a cheeseburger. That was one of the things you couldn't do, because it's like they're both from the cow, but they're different somehow. So that was the rule against that. Like separate, it was fine to eat them, but not together, which I'm sure there was a reason behind that. I don't know if that.
Well, there's the religious reason. It's a command of God. You just do it because that's what it says. But when you really dig into the food laws and you realize they were protecting against cross-contamination and all kinds of other foodborne problems that they're.
Because if you think about pork and shellfish, they can be very dangerous if not handled properly, right?
Exactly right. And all of that is worked into the tradition, and it's like, man, that's just old wisdom. you know, and this is why understanding tradition is so important, and how foolish it is, a generation that wants to forget the past, kill it if you have to. You know, this postmodernist, you know,
There are lots
so-called
of
progressivism.
modern things I'd like to forget. I'm tired of having this mindset of trying to live back in the 90s, because it's like I'm not living in the 90s, but I want to go back there because things weren't as messed up. It's like I don't.
Well, there was a time when I said I wanted to go back to the 80s. And
Yeah.
now I'm starting to look at the 70s all over again and go, there was some stuff in the 70s that I would say is actually even better than the 80s.
I
Although
am.
there was some crazy stuff too in the
Oh, there
70s.
was.
You had smoking sections in restaurants, and
Yep.
you had
Oh yeah, they had those in the 80s still. I remember that.
did they still have them into the
Yeah,
80s?
yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah, I know we moved to Florida. I think things changed because I think smoking wasn't as prevalent down here. Plus, eventually they just got rid of smoking sections in restaurants altogether in this state. I do remember in New Jersey though there was smoking or not. Kind of like how you would ask, do you want a booth or a table outside or inside? There used to also be smoking and non-smoking sections in
right,
restaurants. I
that's
remember that.
exactly right. And I've told the story how, you know, it was well into, you know, the banning of smoking, where Netter and I went to a restaurant. I said 2 for non-smoking, and the young woman looked at me like, non-smoking,
New
and I'm
hire
like,
probably.
and I'm so, well, not only new hire but young. You know,
Okay, yeah.
it was something that, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm old. Um, Anywhere's fine. 2, please. And I just didn't know how to say it. Two. I was just so used to 2, 4, 6 for non-smoking, and I'm like, oh, I don't specify 2.
And what
for
always
whatever,
got me is
you know?
you got the smoking section, you got the non-smoking section. Did they really think that the smoke was going to stop as it got to the non-smoking section and not come into our section?
Right.
I always imagine that there was like, you know, something to do with the air conditioning unit and stuff, which probably wasn't the case, but I like to believe that, you know.
Like I think Red Lobster had used to have a smoking and non-smoking. That's ringing a bell to me.
And there were some nicer restaurants that my grandfather used to take me to, where literally, if you walked from the smoking section to the non-smoking section and back, there was clearly an air quality difference. And it almost was like the smoke stopped right here, and it really was because of the airflow. I mean, they actually bothered to deal with that, but yeah, it's not even necessary anymore. You got to go outside to smoke, and literally, there's like, depending on where you are, there's laws that say you can't smoke within 15 feet of the entrance of a building. You know, it's like, wow, you know, but and yeah, it really is getting to the point where there's so few people now that still smoke. They are very, very much in the minority. So yeah, sorry guys, you want to smoke, you got to go out and down and that way, and you know, so on and so
It
forth.
really kicked off in this country. I think Europe was slower to adapt to that, the non-smoking
Yeah,
thing. But it's weird. I read these old Bond novels and everyone's smoking. You
yeah,
know, like
absolutely. Well,
Bond.
look
Yeah,
at television. Look at things like uh what's it called, the Lucy show, I Love
I
Lucy,
Love Lucy.
right?
Yes.
They were all smoking, you
Yep.
know, and it was just so ubiquitous. And yeah, you could even get into the fact that they knew it was dangerous, at least the tobacco companies did, but boy, they didn't let anybody know. So everyone was like, oh no, it's perfectly fine.
Yeah, I think in this latest book he was trying to give up or at least reduce the cigarettes, but it didn't work because then a big disaster happens and he starts smoking again. But
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
w-
I can kind of get that.
I don't know what they always say though. We're most fascinated by the decade before we were born.
Because you do tend to romanticize it. You
Yes,
know,
but
I
to me that's
remember
the
that.
70s because I was a kid during the 70s, so I do
Well, and in the
grandparents. Yeah,
70s, right? What were we going through in the 70s? You had George Lucas had just done American Graffiti,
right.
and then
1950s. Yeah,
then what was it? There was an episode of Love American Style called, what was it? Love in the Happy Days or something like that, which
Right.
was like a backdoor pilot for the show Happy Days.
Yeah.
Which was kind of a blending of, the American Graffiti and so on and so on. Elements of American Graffiti worked its way into Happy Days, and there's a whole history behind it. Like, hey, we want a series like this, so they literally would take the actors from that and work them in and so forth, and you can kind of see how it evolved. But my mother pointed out, she took me to a drive-in to see the movie Grease, and she was kind of talking about, between Grease and American Graffiti and Happy Days on TV, and then eventually Laverne and Shirley. She's like, this is them, kind of bringing into pop culture her era. It was like the nostalgia, and it's like I see it happen then in the 90s. They had that 70s show,
Right.
and I'm like, this is like Happy Days for this generation.
There were different 70s style things in the 90s. For instance, a lot of Tarantino movies, even though they were taking place in the modern day,
the
they had a
Grindhouse
70s
and all that kind of
aesthetic.
stuff. Yeah.
Also, Boogie Nights, the big Paul Thomas Anderson movie, that was a 70s picture. The Studio 54 picture that came out, that was kind of a disaster, though I have a new cut of it, which I've been meaning to watch. But I kept imagining. And then kind of the 80s nostalgia didn't really, I think, happen until Stranger Things kicked off. Right?
Stranger Things really has given us a resurgence of that 80s kind of
it's like they skipped with the 2-decade nostalgia thing.
But if you go
going on the odds
back to the 70s again, you're seeing like I said, my mom's era with the 50s and 60s nostalgia, but you're also seeing the tail end of my mother had a lot of 30s and 40s nostalgia in the movies and television that she was watching too. So she saw that, and I am definitely seeing a lot of that. And because I'm such a big pop culture kind of guy, I have kind of absorbed all of that. And yes, I realize there's a great deal of idealizing, mythologizing of those eras.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's a bad thing. I think there's something to be said for looking back to those eras and wanting to work in the best of those eras into the modern times. In a way, that's kind of what steampunk is. It's looking back to the late 1800s, early 1900s, and just imagining a world where we could have the modern conveniences of today, but the
aesthetic
of those days, right? Where you have, women wearing beautiful dresses and men wearing nice formal wearing hats and having a gentlemanly air to them, right? Where men stand up when women come into the room and so on and so forth. And it's kind of why, I like my martini. I like my fedora hat, my suit jacket and whatnot.
Right.
And maybe I don't go full on with it. I don't wear a tie, but I do wear a collared shirt, right? And stuff like that. And I think that's why, like, for example, I feel like Michael French and I, we really get each other because he sees that in me and I see that in him too. He takes it to the extreme of the cosplayer, right? I mean, I shouldn't say it that way. I don't mean cosplayer like Snarky J. I mean more like the history reenactor cosplayer that gets very specific about knowing the very specifics of if you're going to wear a garment, it's got to be exact and down to the stitch and, what company made them and, And he definitely does that when it comes to things like, for example, the Indiana Jones stuff and whatnot. He gets the exact right shirt, the exact right pants and shoes and hat. And, he's got videos about, the Indiana Jones hat, and what is and is not, the closest thing to screen accurate and historically accurate that you can get, and why. And I really do respect that. As a history reenactor with the Victorian stuff, we've had to look into, and this is always the question, right? If you're going to do Civil War reenacting, World War II reenacting, Victorian reenacting, you don't necessarily want to wear a uniform, for example, from the era, because it's, over 100 years old.
Right.
It would have looked new in the day. So what do? You reference an original piece, but you literally have to handcraft it yourself,
or see
as
if
close
anything,
as possible.
or see if there's any sort of modern equivalent. But yeah,
Sometimes there are, sometimes there aren't. And yes, you're absolutely right. Actually, Michael French, one of Michael French's most recent videos, where he's talking about the handguns that Lara Croft uses in the movies and in the games and so forth. He talks about trying to reproduce those and realizing that there are things where this isn't accurate, and historically you can't do it accurately. You'd have to do a custom job, but it's kind of a stupid custom job. So maybe you don't do that particular thing. And it's worth looking into, especially if you're a 2A kind of person, especially if you're a Lara Croft enthusiast. Definitely look into.
I'm trying to be one, except that the current people that own Lara Croft make it difficult. But we did get a recently remastered second collection of the older titles, and we are getting comic book reprints this summer, which I'm very happy about. So
yeah, he talks about the games too. Of course, he's got some playthroughs of the most recent, so it's definitely worth checking out. I just recently saw a completely unrelated video. Some random guy on the internet did a video where he takes a 1990s kind of off-brand Lara Croft licensed figure that looks as derpy as hell, and he kind of redoes. I mean, like the head, he's like, the head is too small, the paintwork is stupid, so he boils and pops the head, and then he does a mold of the head, and then he does a blow up of the head so that it's the right size. And it's amazing how he does it. And then he does the painting and stuff and whatnot. The arm joints are just, terrible. And he points out a couple things about it. He's like, it's very clear that they started with a statue in a specific pose, and then they added articulation. And so the arm joints look like Quasimodo, with these big ass, shoulders to put in these pivots. And he's like, yeah, no, we got to rework all of this. He's like, we got to take the bend out of the arms. So he cuts the arms and resculpts them. So they're still 5 POA figures, but they're more straight arms. He says these hands are completely janky. So he remolds the hands from another figure. I think it was like an Angel figure, Buffy Angel,
yes,
an action figure in that line that is holding guns, and he just, molds them holding the guns. It's very, if you're interested, I'll send you the link.
Send it to me. I'm kind of curious what the name of this figure was. Lucy Craft or something like that. I don't know.
No. It was a licensed Lara Croft figure, but it was an off-brand. I think it was. You know what it was? It was Toy Biz. Toy Biz very briefly had a license to do a Lara Croft figure. Yeah,
I might have one of those. I have the one in her scuba gear from that era. I'll have to see if that's the one he had.
It's I just got to go to my history and I can find it.
But yeah, I hope that they bring back classic Lara Croft at some point, just because. But I'll read the comic books, so that's my next goal, is to read those old Lara Croft comics from the '90s, because they're supposed to be really good. They were kind of an entity unto themselves, so I'm kind of curious about
yeah,
them
no
again.
kidding.
But
So
yeah,
so back to the channel. How's your growth been over the past year?
it's all right. It's
There's been some, right?
yeah,
Right.
some. It's better than it's been. Yeah, yeah. But like I said, we had a bit of
We
that.
got one new sub tonight.
Well, there you
Well, thank you,
go.
go.
That's
Thank you.
something.
Thank you. And like I said, I think we've been getting more crowds for the Sunday stream too, so that's cool. Because and I'm just trying to say, I think it's been all right. Yeah, yeah. But
You know what? I'm
I
just going to drop it right into the
okay.
chat. This link to this action figure
I'm
video I
gonna
was
check it
talking
out.
about. I actually don't, like I said, I don't know the YouTuber himself. It's the name of it is HR Zone 2
Okay.
Customs. So I'm guessing he does. And just from the work that he was doing on this one, but the opening scene of this video, you see the derp ass figure. And it's like, oh my gosh, you think that maybe they were trying to do it in the style of like the very first Lara Croft, but she's got round boobs and not triangular boobs, so it couldn't have been it. But the face is so derpy, it looks like that, you know? So yeah, check
Yeah.
it out. It's interesting.
I do miss. I was always angry at Lara Croft back in the day because I had a Nintendo 64 and she was not on Nintendo 64.
Yeah.
She was a big exclusive on the Sony systems, so the PlayStation. So, but
I vaguely remember some friends of mine having it. There must have been a PC port for it
it was
because
on
I do
PC. I
remember.
had the PC port when I got a PC later on. I got it on
Yeah.
PC. There was also a Sega Saturn port of the first game of for heaven's sakes that came out
Wow.
too, which was that was the follow up to the Sega Genesis. Sega did that kind of crashed and burned in the United States, but it did well in Japan, oddly enough. But
Yeah.
it's funny, the Genesis did not do well in Japan, but the thing that did poorly over here and in Europe did well in Japan. So it's weird how that happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why I thought it was nuts when Sony released the PlayStation Mini. They didn't include Tomb Raider. It's like, what are you doing?
I know.
It's like Tomb Raider, Crash Bandicoot. Those were two games that were like must
They
owns on
were
that
the
system.
games. Not only were they do they have like the whole nostalgia factor, but they were just good games to the point that, you know, kids today would actually really enjoy them, you know.
Yeah. Well, they've been re-released now, and I would also argue that Tony Hawk's Pro Skater was another essential PlayStation game, but that had licensed music that they probably couldn't have gotten the rights to. I think they sorted that out with the remasters where they have most of the music. There were still a
Mm-hmm.
few songs they couldn't get, but then they replaced it with other songs instead. So
Yeah.
it's still fairly close to what the original had. But that's the problem with music rights. It messes up everything, right? With TV shows.
Right. You know, which is why that I'm very concerned that I think some of these game companies are going to start turning to like AI, because then it's like, well, now we never have to worry about you know, rights issues, because if it's AI,
Well, these were like bands. They would have actual band music in the games, like
there
ACDC
was
would show
there
up
was
in
some
scenes, you know. Yeah.
great music that was literally composed for games. There
Oh yeah.
was who Ian Zur, I think, was the name of one guy who composed a lot of the electronic music for a lot of big adventure games.
Right.
And he did a bunch for like Star Trek, particularly Klingon games. So I have like
Oh.
albums of his music, just from, I think it was Starfleet Battles or something, had an electronic video game based on their board action. You know, like it was a tabletop starfighter game, Klingons and Federation, and they made a computer version of it that was actually really good. But the best part about it was the soundtrack. I love it. It's good
Oh yes,
stuff.
soundtracks. There's been some great game soundtracks. I want to ask you a question though. Have I roboted at all during our conversation?
Not at all. No, I don't think
I
so.
think I
Netter
might
has
have fixed some of my internet issues, so that's good. Okay.
good. I am glad because yeah, you've been struggling. You were
It's been
dropping
worse
out and
lately,
stuff.
and I at first I thought it was an EV Mux issue, but even when I was on StreamYard on deleted scenes the other day, it would if you guys are roboting on me, that usually it's on my end that something's like when it's stuttering.
Yeah.
But this seems to have
Well,
boosted it, so I think I might be okay. We'll see how it
there
goes.
was that confounding factor because when I made the switch to EVMux, it was about the same time I was trying to make as much as possible. I was trying to change my browser from Google Chrome to Firefox. Firefox does not like my microphone, so I cannot
Oh,
stream.
I
I
see.
like right now the StreamYard link is open with Google Chrome because I can't use Firefox. The other thing too is trying to use Firefox to set up a stream, regardless of whether it's EVMux or StreamYard. It doesn't like to upload the pictures for like thumbnails or backgrounds, and I don't know what it is. It's just a shortcoming of Firefox. There are other things I like about Firefox, particularly the whole ad blocking element. Oh, I know we're not supposed to mention that on YouTube, but you know what? Yeah, we get so little revenue from adverts on YouTube. I encourage you for the sake of your enjoyment of videos, go right ahead. I will not be offended if you do.
Okay.
Especially if you're like Lester San Jose, who just joined us, and you are a VIP member. Of course, you are absolutely already supporting the channel in the best way possible. So I want to thank Lester San Jose, who I saw just showed up. Opera has become my go-to browser. I've heard of that. I'm going to have to look into that. I'm very challenged to try new things, and I at least had enough history with Firefox that I was, comfortable. But I'm going to have to probably start looking at a different browser. You know, hey, I've been happy now that I've finally gotten through most of my learning curve with. I'm still learning a lot of the elements of EVMux, but I've been able to do most of the same things in EVMux that I could do on StreamYard. And I'm realizing now there's more that I could do. I just need to learn some of the bells and whistles because there's some really good stuff on EVMux. It takes streaming to a higher level, I think, in a lot of ways.
Cool.
But it's rough for boomers to get used to.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, this is AI telling me this.
What's
Okay,
that?
Samuel Proctor was asking how much the Genesis was at launch. I thought it was 149.99. That's what it was later brought down to. I think it started at $189.99, and that was in 80s money, late 80s money. So the dollar was worth more back then. So not cheap, but it was state of the art, and they threw in a game, and they gave you two controllers, not just one back in the day.
Yeah, the Atari 2600 was
They come with two controllers.
$189.95 when it first came out.
I think they were trying to keep things similar. I think the Nintendo 64 crossed the Rubicon because I know that came out at $249.99. That was in '96, as I recall. That was $250. They went up to with that. Yeah.
One thing you have to do with this stuff is you've got to adjust it for inflation
Yep.
because our brains are geared towards how much things are valued at right now. And we forget when we think about how cheap things were. That sounds cheap. $189.95 in 1977 was analogous to $960 in 2023.
Yep.
So it's probably over $1,000 in 2025 money,
Yeah, I'm looking up the price of the Super Nintendo in 91, $199. This is equivalent to about $450 in 2023. I bet you ready money Sega lowered the price of the Genesis to $149.99 when the Super Nintendo came out,
Yeah.
because they were trying to beat Nintendo. And they already had a head start in the 16-bit age. That's probably what happened.
I
They probably
never
lowered it.
really thought about it, but
Yeah.
and I knew that my Atari 2600 was a big deal because my mom, grandmother, and uncle
Yeah.
all put in together to buy that for me. When you consider it was the equivalent of about $960, relatively speaking, that's a lot. And that doesn't even count the cartridges, because each game was, a separate purchase.
I know for Super Nintendo, standard price was $59.99. And this is the money back then. And regular, except for the games published by Nintendo themselves, like the Marios or the Zeldas, they would be $49.99 usually. So they were $10 cheaper because Nintendo manufactured all the cartridges themselves, so they gave their own games a discount as opposed to the third parties.
Just unrelated, I just happened to see a Reddit question. How could people in 1980 afford game consoles? So I was watching a video on YouTube about the history of Intellivision, which said the Atari 2600 cost $150 in 1980.
Yep.
Whereas Intellivision cost $300. That's $540 and $1,080 in 2022 price. Yet the 2600 and Intellivision were both widely popular. So how could people afford to dish out so much cash for those consoles back then? I would say, if I was to answer that question, but I would never actually get an account on Reddit to interact with anybody on there. I would have to say that it was because we didn't spend our money back then the way we do now.
Right.
There weren't things like microtransactions. There weren't
even cable wasn't
streaming.
as bad. Yeah.
Even cable, yeah. Well, let's face it, for me back in the 70s, even in 1980, well, I don't know, when did we get cable for the first time? It had to be in the early 80s.
If you watch old videos of like a kid getting a Super Nintendo and like there's a brother and sister,
Yeah.
it's for you both. So they would say.
You better share it. Yeah, exactly.
In fact, when we had the NES, it was originally bought for both my brother and myself. And of course, this is one of these things where I don't want to share the console with him. He eventually got the Sega Genesis later on that summer, and I got my own game console. It wasn't until a bit of a ways later, because it was expensive. This was considered like high end electronics for your house.
We did get the they would tell me, well, you gotta share it with your brother.
Yes,
but of course there was the element of you got to be careful in sharing it with your brother, because it's also very breakable, and my brother was not reliable in that regard, so I'd have to be careful in sharing it with him. I had to supervise him all the time, and luckily it turned out my brother wasn't so into actually playing the games so much as watching me play the games. But that did mean that there was a number of games that I had to play that I wasn't really interested in playing, that I had to play for him to. There was, oh God, I can't believe I'm going to tell this story.
Why?
It was an Activision cartridge.
They were usually good, the Activision.
Most of them were good, but the one we had gotten that he wanted was a strawberry shortcake game. Do you know this game?
No, but I know strawberry shortcake. Oh my!
So, strawberry shortcake. The whole game was a matchup game. You've seen this, right? They have it. It's a standard model, and you could just swap out the pictures, the head, torso, and legs of the different characters, right? And you would have to, change the head, change the middle, change the feet until you got the right character. And I do have to be honest with you, as dumb as the game was, I started to get to like the see, because like it was each character had a theme song too. So, and I liked some of those tunes, and it was kind of neat. And what was also kind of stupid funny was having the head of one character, the torso of another, and the feet of another, and having this really weird tune that was an amalgamation of the three, you know?
So it was like the first example of like a Lego game, basically. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, kind of. And yeah, and I would find myself actually, just when I wanted to play mindlessly, playing this game, and my mother would be like, "Your brother isn't even here. Why are you playing?" I'm like, I kind of like, the tune for who's the Blueberry Boy? I forget his name.
I don't remember.
Huckleberry Pie, I think, or something like that.
Yes, I know there were cartoons that I probably watched, but I don't remember them yet. It's weird though. Like in those Lego games, you can swap out the heads and torsos of characters, and like I think you could make like a Darth Vader's head on Chewbacca if you wanted to in like one of the Lego Star Wars games or something. It's like
that's kind of funny. Well, if you were playing actual Legos, you could do that.
You could do that. So they actually offer that kind of customization in those games.
Thank you. That's very nice of you, JPRPH. When he says you're a great brother, Troy. Yeah, I'd like to think I was, but yeah. And then he'd get bored, and I'd be like, "Well, then can I play one of my games?" Yeah, go ahead, play your own game. And then he'd start getting interested in the game I was playing. He liked watching me play E.T. And I'm like,
no,
this is so boring.
You had E.T.?
Yeah.
We're gonna save that discussion for maybe a Friday night sometime. I don't know if that's enough for a whole night, but I have to hear your ET story. It's notorious.
I'll tell you.
You and I could do our worst game of all time thing. I could do Super Nintendo 64. You could do ET.
Very interesting. So I'm sure people that even if you've never played Atari 2600, you've seen videos on YouTube of people talking about the ET game and how terrible it was. The same basic game mechanics of the ET game were used in Indiana Jones, the Raiders of the Lost Ark game or whatever. And I kind of like that one too. I had to get that one. And I'm like, okay, I get how to play this because it's basically like ET. But instead of getting like the record player and the Reese's Pieces and the other things in order to put together the thing to phone home and then get to the certain place to get to the ship so you could beam up to your ship. With Indiana Jones, it was getting the pieces. In this particular case, it was getting the three pieces of the staff of Ra. The head of the staff of Ra was in three pieces, and you had to get the three pieces and put it on the staff, then take it to the map room at an exact time to see. It would show you where you had to dig to get the Ark of the Covenant. And honestly, it wasn't that difficult. It was actually, and of course you had the whip and the gun to fend off snakes and spiders, and Belloc was trying to take the pieces from you, so you'd have to outrun him or
outrun Belloc.
Yeah, and it wasn't a bad game. And I liked it, and I kind of liked being able to get to the end so that I could hear it play the Raiders of the Lost Ark theme in, 12-bit sound or whatever, however many bits those 32-bit sound or whatever. And it would play it over and over and over again. It played like the same stanza over and over again. But I liked it.
The Atari.
Honestly, when you understand how limited that system was, what they were able to do with it, if a game was good on the Atari 2600, then the guys that wrote it were pretty brilliant. They made it work.
I'll say this: the Atari version of Wizard of War didn't look half bad. The version I saw of it for the 2600.
Yeah.
Do you remember Wizard of War?
I'll tell you, there was also, and this is like the dawn of home arcade games. There were glitches. And some of those glitches were awesome. Just like today, there are some glitches in games that are just gold. And there was stuff like the game that came packed with the Atari 2600 was a game called Combat. And the primary thing was you got a maze on the screen, and it's a 2-player game. Well, I mean, you could play against the computer, but it was more fun to play against a real person. You both had a tank, and you'd move the tank around, and you'd shoot at each other, and it was a lot of fun. If you could line up your shot just right and hit your opponent in just the right place on the map in just the right way, you'd send him flying off the screen, and he'd go around and around and around and around and then stop. And you'd laugh. So it was a glitch, but it had no impact on the game, really, ultimately.
But it was something you could entertain you and your friends
with.
But
it was entertaining, and we would laugh, and we would do that. And every time it would happen, usually it happened by accident, and we would laugh so hard. That was like winning, was when that happened. Sometimes, if you were lined up in line with the way it would go off the one side and come on the other, both tanks would go flying. It was the most bizarre thing.
You're easily amused, aren't you?
I was easily amused. Yeah, maybe it's because it was the 70s. Okay,
That's the thing. I think the kids I don't know if the kids these days are easily amused. We had to find things to easily amuse us back in the day, like playing with dominoes and knocking them over. That sort of thing.
Damn, that was fun. I used to really enjoy that. Yeah.
They even had a thing you could buy called Domino Rally, where you would buy
I saw that. Yeah.
They were neat toys. Those were some neat toys from the 80s. But
it was kind of a great idea with the straightaways and the curves. You have this track, and you'd have the little plastic dominoes that clicked right in. So that all you had to do was flip the whole thing up, and you'd have a whole section of them up.
But they were smart enough to know that you couldn't just make it all the clipping once, because then people would get bored. So you had those for assistance, and then you had the ones you had to line up yourself. Yes.
Yep.
I remember that. But no, this was fun.
It was kind of like a little cheaty way of doing it. It was, but you know what it is too. These were also the games and toys and stuff that you got bored with pretty quick. Right? Yeah. I mean, there was one and Dan Monroe from movies. What is it? Music, movies, and monsters. Yeah, on YouTube. Music and monsters. Anyway, Dan Monroe was talking about something that I did not have, but I do remember from the 70s. It was this little, nowadays it would be like a little, what do they call those? The helicopters that you fly with a
drone.
Yeah, it would be like a drone, but it wasn't. Right. This was before drones. It was literally on an armature. It would fly up like a drone, and then it would go around in a circle, on a like a boom, like an armature, and it would go up and down as you would increase the speed, but you were tethered by a wire, It wasn't a true. And what the fun of it was, you'd have it go around, and it had a hook on the bottom, and you'd try to, as you came around, drop it down and hook onto the gurney to rescue the person, and then you'd take it and try and drop it off on top of the hospital, and then you'd come around and you'd pick up other things and stuff like that. It got old fast, but it was fun, when it was new.
Cool. Well, that's what happened with toys. You'd enjoy them for about a week, and then you'd put them away, and then you'd maybe take them out later, right?
Or like Dan Monroe was sharing, that he figured that if he was to cut the armature off, he'd have himself a drone, not realizing that you were then severing the wire that powered the thing, and it didn't work anymore. Well, now you can go out and buy yourself a drone, and you can do even bigger things with it, But,
cool. Anyway. Very neat.
So there you go. We've kind of in miniature done a good old days, a last call, whatever kind of a talk tonight.
Yeah, it was
But
fun. We'll have to do this again. But it was great meeting you all in person.
well, how
and having
about
a good time.
tomorrow we talk about soap
Yes,
opera?
tomorrow is the soap opera talk, which I'll be.
You won't have much to contribute, but you are going to do some of the slideshow for us.
I like Fanolia Hughes, but I don't think she's going to be mentioned tomorrow night. So, okay.
You can feel free to make her your topic.
No, it's okay. I don't know enough. I'm sorry. I just remember her.
Because Fanola Hughes was on One Life to Live too.
Oh, that's interesting.
So
okay,
I could steer the conversation.
Maybe what I'll do is I'll see if any of your characters maybe interacted with her. I'll bring her up that way.
I will. Well, I will definitely make sure I mention her because now that I think about it, I kind of have to. You're absolutely right.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it's tomorrow night. Special guest will be Sir Torrin Clegane. It was his idea. He wanted to talk about this. And so that's Friday, tomorrow night, 9 Central, 10 Eastern. And I will be drinking. Absolutely. Looking forward to it because this has been a hell of a week.
And if I have an alcoholic beverage, I'm not letting Troy make it because he does doubles and doesn't tell me.
Yeah, I didn't tell you this, Boomer, but she signed off a little bit early last week and went to lie down because she was schnockered. I actually got a note, DM the following day from one of the listeners who was concerned, how's Netter doing? I was surprised that I said, yeah, I made her way too strong a drink and she doesn't drink that much.
Yeah. Now, see, I'm weird. Most people, when they have, I guess, what you would call hangover, they get bad headaches. They can't handle light, sound, whatever. I don't get any of that. I get dizzy.
Yeah.
So if I overindulge, which I've only done a handful of times in my life, I get really dizzy. And the funniest instance of that, we were by a friend's house, and there was like a bunch of us staying over, and I had way too much, because Troy had a drink that he didn't want. I had mine. I ended up downing both of them, and I was pretty schnockered. And so I laid down, and then they're being really loud. I'm just looking, I'm like, what? Why are you being loud? Like,
yeah.
And they're like, yeah, because you were drinking and you got a hangover. I'm like,
yeah,
I was drinking, but I'm just dizzy. I don't have a headache, so you're just being stupid.
I don't headache me either. I just, when I drink, I normally don't drink this much, but it is possible for me to drink so much I do get sick. And then I'm not going to feel very good. But no, I don't get a headache because I always hydrate.
Yes.
I always hydrate. And if I don't, Netter makes sure that I hydrate. So
I make him hydrate.
Yes. So Saturday, we're going to be watching a movie that you might really enjoy, Boomer.
What movie?
Firefox with Clint Eastwood.
You're like, what's it called again?
Oh, yes, Firefox. Yeah, you've mentioned that before. I remember that.
That one is a favorite of mine because it was on the constant repeat on early cable.
That's right.
We had meant when we were doing our talk about, I don't remember if we were talking specifically about cable TV or if we were talking about the 80s or what we were talking about. But when cable first started, they didn't have a lot of things to show on the premium channels. HBO had the license to show a handful of movies and that's it. So they would play these movies over and over and over and over again. You could literally end one movie and it would start immediately after like little, coming attractions of other shows that'll be on later on. You go right into the movie again. And there were times I would spend a whole day watching a movie over and over again because I really liked it. My brother was autistic, so his, over and over and over again, that was kind of on brand for him. So we would watch like the Dark Crystal over and over and over. I remember that, yeah. And I can't even remember what some of the other ones were, some of the other movies at that time, over and over and over again. Yeah,
Cool.
But so yeah, Firefox will be a nice little nostalgic thing for me. Cold War era, sci-fi. It's kind of sci-fi.
Soviet Union, right?
Soviet Union reinvents the SR-71 Blackbird, as I recall.
Okay, cool.
I'm kind of oversimplifying, because the plane wasn't actually the SR-71, but it was kind of in that style, and it was supersonic, and it was supposed to be like powered by biofeedback. You'd put on a helmet and
cool.
Powered it with your mind. They probably could do that kind of stuff now. I don't know, but back then that was sci-fi.
That was state of the art.
Yeah. And so that'll be Sunday, right back, or Saturday, right back here on Netter's channel. As soon as we finish up here, of course, make sure you go over. Do you have the forward to?
No, because I asked you if there was, and you're like, no.
Oh, I thought you were talking about. I'm sorry.
But I can set it up.
Yeah, set it up. As soon as we're done here, you'll be auto dramatically shot over to Deleted Scenes channel for his coming attractions. So you know all the stuff he's got coming up this weekend. I can never keep it all in my head, so that's why he started his own show for that. That'll be right after this. And then but nestled in the middle of the things he does on Sunday, we're gonna have a hell of a Geeky Geezers this week, my friend. Let me tell you.
Oh, a lot of deaths we're going to be talking about too.
A lot of deaths. Maybe we'll have a little bit more information on some of them.
And one we found out today.
Yeah, that one is pretty. Pretty grisly.
There's some major ones. Yeah.
I think we know. They haven't released the official cause of death on Gene Hackman and his wife and dog. But I think just based on that, we can kind of guess what it was. But I mean, let's face it, that's kind of tragic. But as ways to go, that's probably one of the, least bad ways to go. Other than the fact that, it is dying, which is not a good thing.
Not pleasant.
Yeah.
But and it is tragic because he was a national treasure. But so we're gonna have at least 4 in remembrances. But we're also gonna have to talk about some pretty heavy topics in terms of the whole entertainment industry, and one that we seem to recycle every other year or so. We have the same conversation, and we got to do it again because it's in the news again. So we'll talk about it.
We're going to be back to it. Yep.
Be purposely vague, but most of you guys know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes.
But anyway. So that's Sunday. Monday, I'm going to try to, this time I'm going to tell you in advance. I'm going to try to do source code again, but if it does not work, I will instead be doing the Edge of, what is it called? The Edge of Tomorrow.
Oh, Tom Cruise.
Which they now want to call Live, Die, Repeat, but I'm going to continue to call it Edge of Tomorrow. Because I don't like change.
Yes, but they originally wanted to call it Live, Die, Repeat, and the studio
said no. They changed their mind, and they called it what they called it, and once it's released, that's it. That's how I remember it. It's like the Sears Tower. They could have called it anything they wanted to, but it was the Sears Tower.
Okay.
And I don't care if they want to call it the Willis Tower now.
Okay.
It's the Sears Tower.
Okay.
Screw them.
What you talk about, Willis?
Exactly.
Okay. Anyway, moving on to Tuesday.
Tuesday, we're going to get the second part of my talk on the secret history of Twin Peaks. Sorry if, you found my last talk to be a little boring because there wasn't anything going on the screen, or because it was just me talking the whole time. But I'm sorry, this is the way it goes sometimes, people.
Yeah, I got a snarky message on my
instance
chat.
Of it,
yeah. After the last Spark 121, and it's just like, you know what? You may not have enjoyed it, but other people did. So
feel
show up
free
then.
to go, and make your own video about it if you don't like it, for crying out loud.
Yes.
Right?
You did great.
But all you need is kill. All you need is kill was the name of the manga and was the original title for the film. Wow. All you need is kill. That sounds like a Beatles song.
All you need is kill.
Bang, 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 bang. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so yeah, 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern on Deleted Scenes channel on Tuesday. Live from Sparkwood and 21, followed by next episode of Blake 7, the fallout of the death of Gan. So that's not the name of the episode. It's basically my one-line synopsis of it.
Wow. Okay.
So that's and that brings us around to Thursday. Do you have anything lined up for next Thursday, Never?
I don't know. Let me look.
I don't know. Let me look at what I've got set up.
There's things going on.
There's things, and one of them may be on a Thursday.
I have a guest that doesn't know if they want to do the 6th or the 13th. They haven't gotten back to me yet.
Okay.
Actually, let me see if
it's
they
up
answer
in the
me.
air.
Messages.
We're gonna see.
Okay. My guest will be on the 13th. So the 6th
Is open.
I got nobody.
Yeah.
I ain't got nobody.
That predates David Lee Roth. Just pointing that out to you. And about half of the audience is going, "Who's David Lee Roth?"
That's where we are. That's where we are, unfortunately.
I told you the old joke. I always used to make the joke. I heard that Paul McCartney was in a band before Wings. And then some kid said, "What the hell's Wings?" And I'm like, "Oh, fuck you, kid."
That's where we are.
Youth is wasted on all the wrong people.
Yes.
That little girl, she was like 5 or 6 years old at your uncle's birthday party some years back.
Oh, yeah.
And they're playing the Shrek version, I think, of I'm a Believer.
No, it was the Monkees version. She's like, "Hey, this is that song from Shrek." And I'm like, "Oh, God, no.
At least she knew it.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. That is one of the cool things about soundtracks using doing covers and whatnot, because it does reintroduce a generation to it. I remember when Tiffany did a cover of I Think We're Alone Now.
Yeah, that actually was pretty decent.
And I mean, I knew the song from before because I, again, was real into my mom's music and whatnot. But, I'm like, it's a pretty redheaded girl. It's still good. It's still good. But anyway.
I'm getting everything in your Amazon cart.
Awesome. Thank you, sweetie. I don't even remember what all's in there.
3 Batman books and those little lights to
and the little yeah. So while we were in what do you call it?
MegaCon in Orlando.
At MegaCon in Orlando, Gary gave us each a Doomcock ring, so that we're now in the Doomcock Legion, right? And mine is glow in the dark. So one of the guys we were going around with says, "Oh, that's glow in the dark." Yeah. He said, "Give me." And I held up my ring like Green Lantern up to the lantern, and he had a little blacklight flashlight that he'd shine on it. I did not know this about glow in the dark things. When you shine a black light on it, you know how you have to hold a glow in the dark thing up to a light and it absorbs the light, and then when it goes dark, it glows. Well, black light maxes it out, so it's like glowing even in full daylight.
Oh.
It's amazing. It was really, really bright. So I'm like, I got to get me one of those now. Hey, welcome. Oh, I always get the name wrong. Finity the timey-wimey limey. So good to see you. Timey-wimey limey. You gotta be a Doctor Who fan. I have to imagine. We were just winding down for the night, so if you didn't hear, every Tuesday at roughly 9:30 Central Time on my channel. That's Troy Pacelli. I do a rewatch of Blake 7. And I'm guessing that if you're a Doctor Who fan, you might very well be a Blake 7 fan as well. And we're about midway through season 2. So wonderful if you wanted to join us. Don't know with the time difference how that would be for you, but we'd love to see you. And that's about the week in review. Any last thoughts from you, Boomer?
No, it's been fun. And
other than please subscribe to Age of Boomer's channel.
Yes.
The link is
pinned to the top of the chat.
Pinned to the top of the chat. So make sure you subscribe to him and share it out if you are already subscribed, because we need to get him.
And
yes, he says Blake 7 is the shiz. Yes, and you again making the assumption based on timey-wimey-limey that you are on the other side of the pond. You guys just recently got access to Series 2 on Blu-ray, and we have yet to find out when it's going to be released over here. I got the Season 1.
Right.
Now, of course, my mother's from Oldham, so I need to know...
Yeah, whereabouts.
What part in England are you from?
There you go. But, and he's saying hello, and he, the toasting glasses. Thank you. But
what was that about toasting glasses?
He said hello, Netter, and the emoji is two clinking glasses.
Going,
what? He's actually in New Zealand. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, that's fair. Well, that's an even harder time difference. You're almost 12 hours out or thereabouts. Am I right? Sounds about right.
Yeah, so I can't do a New Zealand
accent. Yeah, I
accent.
can't do New Zealand.
I can do my mom's English and my grandfather's Scottish, but that's about it.
We don't watch Viva La Dirt League well enough to be able to get New Zealand accent.
They don't really have accents.
They have New Zealand accents.
Greg does a little bit, but not really anybody else.
Yeah, they're not full-on New Zealand accents. Yeah.
That begs the question, Affinity, do you know the group Viva La Dirt League? They're also YouTubers?
Yeah, they do a lot of gaming-related humor. Sometimes it's a little too on the nose to be humorous, though. But, yes, it's Friday night here, and the last day of summer. Wow, there you go. That's right, because in the Southern Hemisphere, you swap seasons with us.
Yeah, because it's winter here.
Yeah, we're doing the whole chilly right now. But there you go. Anyway, so yeah, let's put this thing to bed by getting the last call with Troy Pacelli to shut his mouth. How's that? Done.
Sounds good.
For 2 seconds.
Well, she's got to live with me after the show, too.
Yes. Of course, as we've mentioned, the link to Boomer's channel is pinned to the top of the chat. If you're not subscribed, please go and click on that and get that little sub. It costs you nothing, but means a lot to us. And even if you think you're sub, can you go back and double check you're still sub, because YouTube sucks and likes taking subs away?
And they absolutely do. We have found this to be true.
On multiple occasions.
Yep.
I have been unsubbed from like Retroblasting a couple of times, and some other YouTubers. It's like, I'll go there, it's like, why am I unsubbed? So yeah, you want to make sure that you're still sub to Boomer, to Troy, and to myself. Of course, you want to subscribe to each other in the chat, because together we grow.
Yep.
Which is why I do Thursday Things. I get y'all on here. We talk about you. We get to know you. If you all don't know my guests, you get to know them. And then, hey, together we grow. And of course, y'all know what I always say. Mm-hmm. We can talk amongst ourselves. And that's all well good and fun. But it's so much more fun when you guys are joining us in the chat. And you're dropping your comments and questions and trivia and being goofy, whatever it may be. And it doesn't feel like we're separated by miles or continents in some places, like New Zealand.
Yeah, exactly.
It feels like we're all hanging out in our family room. We're enjoying each other's company and passing the popcorn. And you guys, you know you're not just our friends. You are our family. We love you guys, and we appreciate you so very much. And you can be anywhere right now, and you're here. I mean, that's so encouraging. Thank you so much for the many, many ways that you support all of us. It's the comments, the thumbs up, sharing out our streams, becoming members. I can always use some more members, you know that. Doing the super chats, super stickers, whatever it is, you have supported us so much, and we are so very grateful. We don't do this for us. We do this for you. And we must be doing something right because you keep coming back, and I thank you for that. And of course, if you ever have suggestions for any of our streams, please let us know. I'm always open for suggestions of different things to do on Thursday things. I do helpful hints and stuff, as well as standalone videos. If you've got something you're like, hey, can you do a video on blah, blah? If it's something I think I can pull off, sure, I'm happy to do it as long as it's legal. I mean, I can show you how to hide a dead body, but but anyway, thank you again for being here. Thank you for, like I said, the many ways that you support us. And until next time, good night and God bless.
Welcome to the place where the magic happens. Conversations flow and the laughter snapping. Here at Netters Network, where the stories come alive. Every episode's a journey, every guest a drive. Netters Network, tune in for the show, where the headlines meet the heart, and we all get to know. From the highs to the lows, we've got it all in tow. Netters Network, where the world's on the go. Sit right back, let's explore the mind of the people who matter, of every kind. From the stars in the sky to the heroes next door. Netters Network, you'll want more and more. Netters Network, tune in for the show, where the headlines meet the heart, and we all get to know. From the highs to the lows, we've got it all in tow. Netters Network, where the world's on the go. Questions answered, mysteries unfold. With every tale, the truth is told. In this network, we connect the dots. Let's dive in, let's break the knots. Netters Network, tune in for the show, where the headlines meet the heart, and we all get to know. From the highs to the lows, we've got it all in tow. Netters Network, where the world's on the go. So don't touch that dial, stay right here. Netters Network, the time is near. For talk that's real, for talk that's true. Netters Network, and it's all for you.